Archaeologists have learned from their excavations in the land called Israel that the Israelites were never in the land known as Egypt, did not wander the desert, did not conquer the land in a military campaign, and did not pass it on to the 12 tribes of Israel. Excavations in the land contemporarily called Israel have revealed startling revelations. Ze'ev Herzog is an Israeli archaeologist, professor of archaeology at the Department of Archaeology and Ancient Near Eastern Cultures at Tel Aviv University, specializing in social archaeology, ancient architecture, and field archaeology. As an Israeli, Professor Herzog says after 70 years of intensive excavations, the evidence shows that there was no exodus from Egypt, as he is quoted saying, "The patriarchs' acts are legendary stories. We did not sojourn in Egypt or make an exodus. We did not conquer the land, neither is there any mention of the empire of David and Solomon. Those who take an interest have known these facts for years, but Israel is a stubborn people and doesn't want to hear about it." Those who have taken an interest in the subject, such as Jewish authors A. N. Polyak, a professor of medieval Jewish history at Tel Aviv University, whose book Khazaria created quite a storm throughout Israel by challenging the chosen people thesis on which the Israeli nation is based. In his introduction, he writes, "The facts demand a new approach, both to the problem of the relations between the Khazar Jewry and other Jewish communities, and to the question of how far we can go in regarding this Khazar Jewry as the nucleus of the large Jewish settlements in Eastern Europe, since the descendants of this settlement constitute now the large majority of world Jewry." Writing between 930 and 956 AD, Kagan Joseph of Khazaria relates the story of the Khazar conversion to Jewry in 740 AD Thessaly. Kagan Bulan came to the conclusion that paganism is useless. It is shameful for us to be pagans. Let us adopt one of the heavenly religions, Christianity, Judaism, or Islam. So Bulan summoned 3 priests representing the 3 religions and had them dispute their creeds before him. But no priest could convince the others or the sovereign that his religion was the best. So the ruler spoke to each of them separately. He asked the Christian priest, "If you were not a Christian or had to give up Christianity, which would you prefer, Islam or Judaism?" The priest said, "If I were to give up Christianity, I would become a Jew." Bulan then asked the follower of Islam the same question, and the Muslim also chose Judaism. And this is how Bulan came to choose Judaism for himself and the people of Khazaria in the 7th century AD, and thereafter the Khazars lived according to Judaic laws. This immersion of the Khazar Empire into Talmudic Judaism is also recorded by Professor Gritz in his book, The History of the Jews. A successor of Bulan, who bore the Hebrew name of Obadiah, was the first to make serious efforts to further the Jewish religion. He invited Jewish sages to settle in his dominions, rewarded them royally, and introduced a divine service modeled on the ancient communities. After Obadiah came a long series of Jewish Khagans, for according to a fundamental law of the state, only Jewish rulers were permitted to ascend the throne. The Khazar Empire ruled the entire area above the Caucasus Mountains, taking tribute from all the tribes of the steppes and from all the merchant caravans. They controlled the Volga, passes between the Black and Caspian Seas. The size and power of the kingdom of Khazaria is indicated by the fact that it sent an army of 40,000 soldiers to help Heraclius of the Byzantines to fight the Persian army. The Jewish Encyclopedia refers to Khazaria as having had a well-constituted and tolerant government, a flourishing trade, and a well-disciplined army. Dr. Paul Wexler, himself an Ashkenazi Jew living in Israel, is a linguist at Tel Aviv University, who wrote in his 1993 book, The Ashkenazic Jews, a Slavo-Turkic People in Search of a Jewish Identity. There is also definitive DNA study which has proven the Khazar conversion to Talmudic Judaism. In 2012, Dr. Eran Elchak of Johns Hopkins Medical University used DNA science to prove most Ashkenazi Jews are genetically related to the non-Semitic Khazars, not the biblical tribe of Judah. Dr. Eran Elchak and associates at the McCusick-Nathans Institute of Genetic Medicine, Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, had their report published by the Oxford Journal on behalf of the Society for Molecular Biology and Evolution. Dr. Elchak and the prestigious Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine conclude in their report, The Khazarian hypothesis that suggests Eastern Europeans descended from the Khazars, an amalgam of Turkic clans that settled the Caucasus in the early centuries and converted to Judaism in the 8th century. Following the collapse of their empire, the Judeo-Khazars fled to Eastern Europe. The rise of European Jewry is therefore explained by the contribution of the Judeo-Khazars. The truth about the origins of the Hebrew Bible have been purposefully and deliberately hidden from the mainstream population. Contrary to conventional knowledge and opinion, Africa was the source of knowledge in the world before Common Era times. The first translation of the original Bible is the Septuagint. The source documents where the Septuagint was created comes from Kemet. It was commissioned, underwritten, and patronized by Ptolemy II Philadelphus. He commissioned and paid for the first Bible to ever come into existence. The Septuagint derives its name from the Latin Versio Septuaginta Interpretum, translation of the 70 interpreters, and in Greek its English translation is translation of the 70. However, it was not until the time of Augustine of Hippo that the Greek translation of the Jewish scriptures came to be called by the Latin term Septuaginta. The Roman numeral LXX, meaning 70, is commonly used as an abbreviation for the Septuagint. After the conquests of Alexander had brought Kemet under Macedonian rule, Ptolemy II Philadelphus commissioned 72 Comitian scholars to translate scrolls. The stories are mythological allegories that describe the ascension of the cerebral spinal fluid to the pineal gland, awakening thousands of dormant brain cells and synchronizing one not only with the cosmos but to his divinity and to God himself. The cities and lands mentioned in the story of Exodus refer to the states of consciousness, places of the brain, as well as places of the body. The original Bible, the Septuagint, was written in Koine Greek, Egyptian Greek, not Greek written or spoken in Jerusalem. As defined in Easton's Bible Dictionary, Egypt means the house of bondage. According to Webster's Revised Unabridged Dictionary, bondage is defined as the state of being bound, condition of being under restraint, restraint of personal liberty by compulsion and voluntary servitude, slavery, and captivity. Pharaoh is a Koine Greek word meaning great house. House refers to the astrological house of your afflicted planet. Cometians were well aware of the personal relationship of the celestial heavens and how they affected man, and they knew of the consequences of planets in the native's 12th house. Moses comes from the Phoenician word meaning to pull out, to draw out of water. The concept in the Bible is to open the Red Sea so we can cross over to the Promised Land. In this allegorical story of ascension, there are two things that must be done if one is to find the way to freedom. The firstborn, the one holding us in bondage, must die, and the leaven must be cleaned out. Kill the firstborn and clean out the leaven. The Exodus story of Passover is actually a coded message of overcoming the current consciousness and physical disease by correcting the mutant DNA. The bodily substance that corrects mutant DNA is protein enzyme. The original Bible, the Septuagint, was written in Koine Greek. The Greek word protein means first, which is the biblical definition of the word firstborn. This entire mythology about killing the firstborn is not about physically killing anything. It is about replacing the first, which is of the earth, with the second, which is of heaven. In other words, we must eliminate our dependence on the physical and turn instead to dependence on the spiritual, which comes from above. In addition to killing the firstborn as a requirement for taking part in the Passover, the second rule is that all leaven must be cleaned out of the house. Anatomically, in your body, it is a combination with protein that affects DNA. It is protein enzyme. When we study the word enzyme, it becomes suddenly clear why we should dig deeper into the possible connection of Passover and DNA. Enzyme is defined as any of numerous proteins or conjugated proteins produced by living organisms and functioning as biochemical catalysts. The etymology of the word enzyme stems from the German Enzym, from medieval Greek enzymos, leaven, Greek zume, leaven, yeast. Protein is the firstborn and is required for the correction. Leaven is the enzyme and is required for the correction. Kill out the firstborn and replace the old leaven with the new to escape the bondage of the Pharaoh, which is your mind. Enzyme is a protein that repairs DNA. The Greek word means leaven, the word leaven meaning enzyme. Protein enzyme being the agent that corrects mutant DNA. The firstborn and leaven are the prime concerns in Exodus. It is the firstborn and leaven that play a major part in the exodus from bondage across the Red Sea to the Promised Land. It is the physical protein enzyme which, being defective, is connected to the mutant physical DNA. In other words, it is a new form of protein enzyme that is required, a new code that corrects the old code, since DNA is code. The healing comes from the descending photon, and your electrons must absorb the photon. The old physical protein enzyme must give way to a new form. Passover connects to the change of seasons of the earth, the changes of ages from Pisces to Aquarius and the cosmos. Passing over from one age to the other is to pass over from one season to the other upon the earth. The way to the promised land is made by opening the Red Sea. The opening of the Red Sea refers to the opening of a mutant genetic strand to make a repair, which brings us over to the promised land of a new mind. The Red Sea being the genetic strand. Once it is open, it makes its way to the promised land, which is now open to us with the mapping of the human genome. The promised land is the promised land being a new consciousness of health and freedom from balanced brain hemispheres. When we enter into meditation, we go to the backside, the spine, and the energy flows upward to the pineal gland. At that time, we open ourselves to the higher photon. We yield up that which is the physical. We take no thought. We must sacrifice the physical to receive the supreme photon, so we may pass over to a new consciousness, our new DNA. The book of Exodus is ultimately about DNA repair. The opening of the Red Sea is connected to the genetic code, repairing a mutant distortion in DNA. If you look at an encyclopedia diagram, repair enzymes correcting the distortion in the DNA. The new firstborn and new leaven are opening the Red Sea in the same way that the protein enzyme opens the distorted strand, so it can be repaired. Stedman's Medical Dictionary provides an illustrated diagram of DNA repair. We see the opening in illustration 1, the repair in illustration 2, the joining or closing in illustration 3, the open, crossing, repair, and closing. The opening is closed as the Red Sea was closed, and a new way is made to the promised land of healing and restoration. The second enzyme makes a copy of good DNA, and the third puts him back in place, and the healing takes place. In other words, a way is made to the promised land of healing by opening the DNA strand and replacing the defective protein enzyme with a new protein enzyme. Passover refers to the passing over to another state of consciousness, an exodus of the mind away from the inner things that have kept us in bondage, as Egypt means the place of bondage.